afternoon. My name is Rod Allman. On behalf of the Singing Americans of Sandy County, we'd like to welcome you to our little program today entitled America Through It All. This is a very special time, tomorrow. Our country will be 235 years old. And this year also marks the 10th anniversary of the disaster of 9/11. We're going to be paying attention to all of those today. There's some very special things in the concerts and folks have been introduced to in just a moment. First of all, before we get started, we want to thank, there's so many people that make concerts like this possible. Many of their names are in your program, folks who are helping backstage, those who are helping with some reenactments and some things that are going on. We want to especially thank Tim Harris of Tim Harris Music on Main, who's helping us with the music today and always does such a wonderful job, and we couldn't do it without him. Thank you very much. Today, before we get started, we have two very special guests that I think will help set the tone for what we're going to do today, and I really am honored to have the opportunity to introduce them to you today. Most of you, those of you who are of the greatest generation or just slightly younger than that, would have to say that the moment that stands still in your mind would have to be December 7, 1941, the bombing of Pearl Harbor, which brought America into the Second World War. We are honored today to have with us a survivor of Pearl Harbor. She was a family member who was there, and we want to bring her out here if we introduce her. Here she comes. Gary Williams was born July 10th, 1919 in the Liberty Church community of Oakboro, North Carolina. She was the youngest of 13 children. She attended Indy School before marrying Thomas Creighton, who enlisted in the Navy. During her years as a military wife, Gary traveled to all 50 states. Her husband, Tom, was sent to Pearl Harbor, so Gary went with him. He was assigned to a submarine fleet. On that unforgettable day, December 7, 1941, her day started the same as always. Her husband was on a minesweep in the channel on the USS Crossbill. The women in the community heard airplanes, but thought it was just a drill. All of a sudden, bombs were falling from the sky. Gary and all her friends ran to their homes and grabbed the mattresses off their beds and got under them. When the bombing stopped, they were all in shock because the entire island was destroyed, along with most of the ships that were in the harbor. Tom was fortunate. He was out in the bay when it happened, so he was not injured. His ship was one of the first to spot the subs and know that something was going to happen. They notified the land crew, but it was too late. The women made bandages for the American Red Cross, and later, on December 24th, Christmas Eve, all of the children and women were evacuated by a convoy and ships and planes to San Francisco. Tom later was killed on the submarine while breaking up a fight between two other men. Gary here returned to Oakboro to live with her 6-month-old baby. In the later years, she married Doug Phillips and had a son. They moved to Pensacola, Florida, where she began working at the Navy Exchange. She worked there until just a few years ago. She is very active in the Fleet Reserve, the VFW, and American Legion, serving as chaplain for Fleet Reserve for 10 years. She remains active and will always be a Navy woman. She will never forget the friends that she left behind. And I met her just a few minutes ago. What a joy and an honor to know this lady who witnessed Pearl Harbor. Let's hear it for Gary. For folks of my age, and those who are not around here at Pearl Harbor, I think we have to agree that our Pearl Harbor moment was September 11, 2001, when the trade towers came down, the Pentagon was bombed, and the plane dropped in Pennsylvania. This lady right here is Leah Winters, and she saw some of that happen. Let me tell you Leah's story here. What started out as a normal sunny morning quickly changed for our guest Leah here. Her dad called from North Carolina to ask her what had happened while she waited for a cab in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Is that right? As her cab driver drove her closer to the Williamsburg Bridge on the Brooklyn side, Leah could see the black smoke cloud billowing across the sky that was coming from the towers. She made a split-second decision not to travel to her job in the city. It was only 20 blocks north of the towers. She had the driver drop her off down by the water in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. From there, a worker motioned for her to go to the top of the building where she could access the rooftop to see what was going on. When she got up there, Leah here overheard about 10 Hasidic Jewish men with handheld radios talking to each other, talking about there being more planes coming. Leah walked over to the edge of the roof and found about 15 other locals from the neighborhood standing in silence. There were no words to describe what was unfolding before them. From the rooftops, you could see over the water to the FDR highway, where a steady flow of red flashing lights from the emergency vehicles raced to what we now know as Ground Zero. Leah stood in disbelief with the others around her. Suddenly, as if things were not bad enough, and the silence was already deafening, the first tower fell from the skyline into a powder of sand and dust. As she began to snap out of things, Leah here thought, maybe it's not safe to be on the roof any longer. She then took note of the sirens that began to get louder around her, and that's when she realized that all the fire and rescue units from her neighborhood and beyond were trying desperately to respond to the call for help. The reality was sinking in. By the time she came down from the rooftop, the flags and the spirit of togetherness and American pride was already starting to shape itself. People who had never spoken to each other were stopped alongside the streets talking about what was happening. And I'm going to quote what you gave us here. In the days after that, you could not turn a corner without being proud to be an American, as the spirit of overwhelming resolve began to stand strong. Our safety and strength was found that day, and the American spirit was felt with each flying flag. We knew in those days that America would forever remain defiant against any opposition, as that is who we are as God's people. God bless America, and I will never forget you. Please welcome Miss Leah Winters here. Both of these ladies for being our guests today, and we're going to invite them to, if some of you would like to meet them, we're going to ask them to be down here at the edge of the stage after the show if you'd like to meet them. They have a fascinating story. Let's hear it for them again. It's really something, and it's just an honor to be with those people. Once again, thank you for being here today. It's extra special. In just a few moments, we're going to begin our show, and we're going to step aside, and the Reverend Joe Smith is going to do our invocation. Immediately following that, we'll be coming out, and once the colors are presented, we're going to ask you to stand up and join us in the singing of our national anthem. Thank you.